building trust and facilitating adoption. So I'm now going to take you through the application process. So if you want to stay on this screen for me, James, for a minute, that'd be great. We're going to start with an overview of the application process here. But it's important to note this is a two-stage process, and this slide describes part one, and I'll touch on part two on the next slide. So firstly, can I just draw your attention to the public description? It needs to be a short description in layman's terms of your project. It's public facing and will be published, so please bear that in mind. Questions 2, 3, and 4 are mandatory Innovate UK questions, and then the rest of the application is split into 4 parts. So part 1, looking at the business case through the market opportunity and the innovation of the project, both commercially and technically. Part 2, address the project details, including your technical approach and project management. Part 3, focusing on the team makeup approach to risk and dissemination of the outcomes of the project. And then part 4, concluding the costs and added value. And there's also an additional economic benefits form that I'll explain in the questions later on. So please be aware that you can submit a previously submitted application once, but not more than once without material change. Okay, next slide, please, James. So now just on to some of the timings. Hopefully, those who've been on IFS already, this is not new news to you all, but as you can see, the ARMD4 competition has a very compact and deliberately fast pace towards the awards process. So here I'd just like to touch on one key element, which is worth mentioning, the part 2 of the application process here. So as you can see, following submission of your application, the assessors will be able to formally ask feedback questions, and these will be issued by the 1st of May. These further questions are in response to your written submission. You'll be provided details on how to respond at this stage, and this will allow, the purpose of these questions is to allow the assessor panel the opportunity to ask for further information or clarity around your application before submitting their final scoring. So it's vitally important to ensure that you have your application team ready to respond quickly and thoroughly at this stage. There won't be a formal interview process for this competition. You'll find stringent requirements are in place in terms of the pace of the competition itself, so and the projects when they're awarded. So please make sure you're fully committed to starting and finishing within these timescales, particularly your project start dates. Otherwise, funding could be lost. It's absolutely crucial that your project can start by the 1st of October. And as we go through the question sections, you'll see this has been like one of the key criteria and themes also in the assessment process. Okay, next slide, please, James. Right, on to some key eligibility requirements and aims highlights. So grant asks between £500,000 and £1.5 million. Just to clarify, this is grant ask and not project cost, and can be no more than 50% funded versus the project cost. So just to be clear, as an example, if you're a single applicant SME, you're only entitled to a maximum of 50% funding, not the typical 70% that you might be able to on other funding calls. So if you include an academic or an RTO, you can still only get the maximum 50% grant versus cost. So just to be absolutely clear on that point. You must utilise 65% of the grant between up to the 31st of March 2026. Have a project duration between 9 and 12 months, starting again, as I mentioned before, by the 1st of October 2025, and at the latest conclude by the end of September 2026. The primary application technologies developed through the competition should be for the automotive sector, but cross-sector application is valuable for aggregating your demand. And once successfully concluded, the TRL level should be at least 5 or 6, and the MRL level at least 4 or 5. The result is a product demonstrator, a process demonstrator in the representative environment, or an equivalent digital demonstrator. And we're accepting both single entity, as I mentioned before, single entity or collaborative consortia projects. Okay, next slide, please, James. Right. So there's a lot on this slide. So as previously said, the aim of the competition is to develop the demonstration of capability that can lead to further business exploitation. So the projects must utilize future net zero powertrain technologies, future net zero technologies to demonstrate how we can transition to zero emissions for the automotive sector. Once successfully concluded, these 12-month projects can be used to seed future development programs in the UK, generate commercial opportunities, or attract investment into the UK. So as shown on this slide is the scope for the competition. If you're unsure if your proposed project is in scope, and this is a really important point, please contact the APC by emailing into info@apcuk.co.uk, and we'll have that email address again at the end of the presentation. So one of our member of our team can be able to support you in this. Please do this as early as possible for the team to be able to give the best support possible. And it's just worth highlighting there in bold as well. So when we're talking about being able to start on the 1st of October and when you need to finish, so this is a crucial element of the competition, and it's that you must be prepared for potential selection to represent the Advanced Propulsion Centre showcasing at the 2026 Cenex Expo. Just to state, we're not funding projects that are focused only on the development of clean fuels, that are not aligned with the UK's Net Zero Research and Innovations Framework, that are requesting more than 50% grant for the total project costs, that are predominantly off-vehicle, and we're not funding projects that are developing e-scooters or e-bikes. Okay, thanks, James. So we're going to go on to the application questions now. I'll just take you through essentially the criteria that we're looking for in your application responses. So we'll take a bit of time to go through these. So first up, strategic rationale and market opportunities and how you're going to exploit them. So when addressing the strategic rationale and market opportunity, it's absolutely crucial to be really clearly articulate why the project is vital to your business strategy. So you've got to focus on the criticality to your business strategy, explaining how it aligns and support within your business and overall business strategy, highlighting a specific customer problem that your application aims to solve, demonstrating its importance to the target market. Within this question as well, you need to give some detailed analysis of the market size and the market dynamics. So we're really looking for high ambition and high scale as well. So by quantifying the market opportunities and explaining how your project can address these opportunities effectively. Coming into that, the comment on effectively, so outlining your perceived barriers to success, how your credible plans to overcome those barriers, and including thorough competitor analysis is important here to show your understanding of the landscape and how you plan to differentiate your offering. And within that as well, what is your route to market strategy? So really got to describe that, how you intend to take this product forward at the end. And emphasize strong partnerships, any strong partnerships that you have with intellectual property advantages that you might have. Support your strategy with evidence. That's a key point to demonstrate its feasibility for potential success. So by covering those points, you'll provide a compelling case for why your project is strategically important, both within your business and within the industry, and how you can capitalize on the market opportunities. Thanks, James. Okay, so on to question 6. What is innovative about your project? So you must clearly identify the extent in which your project is both commercially and technically innovative. For the development status, please provide a detailed account of the current development status of your project. Relate this to the technology readiness levels, TRL, or manufacturing readiness levels, MRL, that I've mentioned earlier as well, as appropriate, and justify your project's current stage. Explain the know-how and IP again of the consortium members and how they will advance through this project. Highlight the unique expertise and contributions each member brings to the table. Describe any new technologies that your project is seeking to create, develop, and improve, comparing this to what is currently available on the market. In terms of if you have a commercial innovation, please explain how existing technology is being applied in a new way and how this will deliver business benefit to the partners if applicable. Again, if applicable, describe where any areas of technology transfer have been specified. For example, where the technology is migrating across sector boundaries. Okay, next question. So onto your technical approach and project management. Now, this is a very meaty question in itself. So it's really important that you use your appendices to your advantage on this one. So to ensure sort of efficient, effective, and timely delivery of your project, it's important that you outline a very clear and structured approach. It's critical, as I said, that you use your appendices well and focus on the following key points. So you need to describe your work packages and streams in detail, presenting them with reasonable timeframes, ensuring that your technical approach is well defined and likely to deliver some clearly defined outcomes. So really focus on what the specific outcomes of your project are and make sure that they're on your plan. Highlight the confidence and outline the confidence in reaching the desired TRL and MRL levels. So we're really looking for you to advance these, and we want to understand that you've got confidence in how you're going to deliver it, and it's laid out on your plan. For process innovation projects, clearly explain your approach to increasing manufacturing maturity and ensure this aligns with industry relevant quality processes and expectations. In terms of project plan, provide a structured project plan, include fully developed work breakdown structure, indicating the lead partner for each of the tasks in your work breakdown structure. Link this to the cost information as well to show interdependencies. And as I said earlier, it's about demonstrating a logical gated project lifecycle management with the key milestones towards those objectives explained. So in terms of project management, also highlight your reporting lines and governance, executive sponsorship. These are going to be very quick projects, so we need to make sure that any issues that arise are resolved quickly. Ensure that these elements have a clear and demonstrate strong oversight and accountability. And very importantly in this, because we're talking about the project as a whole, you need to start to confirm that you're ready to start by the 1st of October. So when you're thinking about your plans, don't just think about them starting at the start date, think about the build up to the start as well. For this, as I said, appendices are important. So you must submit a project plan or Gantt chart as an appendix to support your answer. So it's a PDF up to 2 pages of A4 long, no larger than 10 megabytes in size. The font has to be legible at 100% zoom. And that's for the assessors. Okay, next question, please, James. Thank you. Okay, so let's start off with the team and describe for this one. So describe why and how the team will be ready to start by the 1st of October. 2025, I think there's a typo on that slide that we need to fix afterwards. So yeah, by 2025. In many ways, this question is to give credibility to your delivery plan that you laid out in the previous question. But it's also important in this one that you're describing the skills and capabilities of the team overall and the consortium members, if applicable, and how they will aid the success of the project. So within this, explain your capacity and the capacity of partners in terms of the design, test and development and prototyping and manufacturing activities. So you can see how this links into the themes that I've mentioned before around your project plan and your TRL and MRL progression and the confidence in that progression within the 12-month timeframe. If you've got any gaps in your team, in the direct team for the project, how will these be addressed? So it's important that you talk about how you'll fill any of those gaps during the project. Explain how your organization and any partners might also fit into a manufacturing supply chain for the product, whether that's during or post-product. If projects are single entity, then you need to justify how you have the capability to deliver the project and as such, why this is the best solution for successful delivery of the project. And within that, you can include things such as how you fill gaps with subcontract or other methods. Thank you. So on to risk management. So what are the risks affecting the project and how will the consortium manage them? So describe the main risks and uncertainties in your project, including technical, commercial, managerial, and environmental risks, how you're going to mitigate them, and the key tools that you're going to use to give confidence to the mitigation strategies and the control in place. So you're encouraged to avoid understating the risk levels, as this might be interpreted as failure to recognise the importance of risk management and success of the project. Again, you must submit a risk register here as an appendix to support your answer. It must be a PDF, again, up to 2 pages of A4 and no larger than 10 megabytes in size and legible at 100% zoom. Okay, dissemination. So you need to deliver, to be able to deliver a demonstrator at Cenex Expo Show in 2026. So you need to just provide for this a clear description of what will be delivered and an accurate description of all the aspects of the demonstrator with clear owners for those. But then wider, how will your project plan disseminate the results following successful delivery of the project? This will include and can include, but it's not limited to the following things. So, new web content, customer presentations, industry exhibits, conferences and seminars that you're going to use to disseminate the results of the projects and any written publications that you might target. In this as well, please list and describe the potential outputs of the demonstrator project that can be exploited. So that the actual physical product itself or service or the process or different applications for your demonstrator. So be clear how the outputs will be exploited by the partners and organizations within the project. And even outside that, if you're using particular subcontractors for different reasons, how will this benefit the wider supply chain as well? So just to note, you'd be required to provide a short closeout report and case study at the end of your funded project as well. Okay, on to question 11, the costs. So how much will the project cost and how does it represent value for money for the team, your team and the taxpayer? So you need to explain your total project costs, the grant you're requesting and how each partner will finance their contributions to the project, how the project represents value for money for you and taxpayer, and how it compares to what you would spend the money on otherwise. The balance of the costs and grant across the partners, also if applicable, and any subcontractor costs and why they might be critical to your project. And it's really important here as well to highlight any of the big spend items and make sure that they're really well justified, especially if you have really big material purchase costs. It's about explaining the quantities and the size of those costs and why they're applicable to your project and justified. Okay, yeah, so on to added value, question 12. So here we're looking at how this public funding will help you accelerate and enhance your approach to developing your project towards commercialization. So here is about providing evidence that the funding is going to increase the total amount the consortia partners can spend on R&D in the UK. So please explain the advantages of public funding to your project. For example, accelerated development, what your project might look like without the public funding, the benefits of involvement of the partners again, and the wider benefits to the UK supply chain and automotive sector. Where applicable, describe and evidence the potential economic and environmental benefits, such as the jobs safeguarded created and project investments, growth in sales and profitability, also very strong parts for this question, and any carbon savings that you can quantify. And then finally, onto this new addition to previous rounds of ARMD. So you'll be able to download a form from the Innovate IFS portal as part of your application. And here you're going to specify the amount of jobs created or safeguarded, both within the project duration and expectations following. What kind of roles are expected in the location of those jobs after the project. This will help inform some of our economic benefits analysis. For any additional spend that you may be looking at as a project to have alongside this project, we're looking to capture that in this form, reporting these that are a direct result of the project. This will typically be investment towards commercializing the technology or scaling up production, but could also be wider spending attributed to the project, as I said, for things that may be out of scope but adjacent to the project. The technology element of this really is to visualize the progression of the project that's to be funded. So we're looking at feedback on your TRL and MRL levels at the start, and not forgetting the purpose of the project. Again, I've mentioned this before already, but it's about advancing your product and process demonstration capability. And finally, we will request for an approximate breakdown of what proportion of the technology will be used in each different technology segment that's in scope. And that answer must equal 100%. So the form won't automatically do that for you. So please just double check that as well. So that concludes running through all the questions. I said there'll be a little bit of time for Q&A at the end, and I'll hand back over to the Innovate UK team and James just to take you through some of the wider parts of the competition and the process. Thanks, James.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alex. So yeah, as Alex said, we are going to now run through a little bit more of the eligibility criteria from Innovate side, and then a lot more about the process of applying for the competition. So to start off, as you can see on the screen here, to lead a project, your organisation must be a UK registered business of any size, have an active registered business base in the UK, and be a grant recipient. And more information on the different types of organisation can be found on our funding rules. And also, academic institutions cannot lead applications or work alone. So, to be able to collaborate with the lead organisation, your organisation must be one of the following types of organisations that you can also see on the screen. So a business of any size, an academic institution, a charity, a not-for-profit organisation, a public sector organisation, or a research and technology organisation, an RTO. And on the screen there as well, you'll see that non-UK registered businesses and research organisations are only eligible to apply for funding if they set up an active UK registered business where the funded project work will be carried out by the start of the project and provide evidence of an intention to expand their research and development activity in the UK during and after their project. And also, each partner organisation must be invited into the Innovation Funding Service by the lead to collaborate on a project. Once partners have accepted the invitation, they will be asked to log in or create an account in IFS, and they are responsible for entering their own project costs. So partners and subcontractors. So your projects can include non-UK partners, as we covered in the last slide, and this includes partners based in the European Union who bring their own funding. Non-UK partners are permitted to carry out project work from within their countries and exploit results overseas, and their costs will count towards the total eligible project costs. Subcontractors are allowed in this competition, and subcontractors can be from anywhere in the UK, and you must select them through your usual procurement process. You can use subcontractors from overseas, but must make the case in your application as to why you cannot use subcontractors from the UK. You must provide a detailed rationale, evidence of the potential UK contractors you approached, and the reasons why they were unable to work with you. We will not accept a cheaper cost as sufficient reason to use overseas subcontractors. And all subcontractor costs must be justified and appropriate to the total project costs. And there are no limits on the number of applications an organisation can be involved in this competition. So this competition does allow you to submit a previously submitted application, and there are definitions on screen there for what classifies as a previously submitted application and does not. So a previously submitted application is an application that Innovate UK judges as not materially different from one you have submitted before, but it can be updated based on the assessor's feedback from previous applications to competitions. If you previously submitted an application that reached our assessment stage, you can reapply once more with the same proposal. However, what is not classified as a previously submitted application is a brand new application, project, or idea that you have not previously submitted into an Innovate UK competition, or a previously submitted or ineligible application which has been updated based on assessor feedback and is materially different from the application submitted before and still fits in with the scope of this competition. So we're going to take a little look now on how you start and complete an application in IFS, which is the Innovation Funding Service. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. So to start an application on the Innovation Funding Service, you will need to create an account. You must ensure that you enter into IFS the correct organization type. Whether it is you starting an account as the lead applicant or whether you are a partner being invited by the lead. Businesses should use the Companies House lookup function so that we have your company number. If you're not Companies House registered, you are still eligible to start an application, but if successful, you must register with the Companies House and provide us your registration number before your grant offer letter can be issued. Failure to register could result in an offer of funding being withdrawn. This is because to be eligible as a UK registered business, you must have a Companies House registration number. Other organisations will need to enter their information manually, and this is for RTOs, universities, etc., not-for-profits. Please note that a registration number that does not relate to a fully registered UK business will not be eligible to apply for funding. So, for example, FC or BR prefixes. Businesses registered in the Channel Islands, Isle of Man, or Crown dependencies are also not eligible for funding as a UK business. For further information, please review our general guidance or reach out to our customer support team. On the screen now are the categories that you'll be asked to split out your project costs into in the finance section of the application. The application finances video will provide further instructions on how to complete each of these sections, including how academics include their finances. There is also guidance within each category on IFS. So in your project finances, there are 4 categories and each organisation within an application must complete their own finance information. So we have your project costs, and this is where you will add in your costs by category, your project location, which is where you will enter the postcode for where most of the project's work will take place. You have your organization, which is where you need to add the details of your organization, including the size, turnover, and number of employees as is applicable. The size that a business declares here, along with any research category, if applicable, is what the IFS system will use to calculate your funding level, so it's very important that you get these details accurate. And the final section is your funding, and this is where you must indicate if you are requesting grant funding with a yes or no, and declare any funding you have received previously for the exact same project activities, as you cannot receive public funding for the same activities twice. But I just want to stress that if you have received funding for a different project, even into the same business, then this is not something you need to input here because it is only relative to the specific project activities that you are applying for grant funding for. So on your funding section, if you are requesting funding, then please click yes. Only answer yes to the other funding question if you've received funding for the same project activities. So this is what I was just talking about, and this is where you will specify whether it's the same activities or not, because anything that you do declare in the other funding field will be deducted from your funding sort figure. And as I said, we can't fund the same activities twice. So this will not be visible to you in the finance summary in IFS. However, it will be updated and deducted by Innovate UK later. And continuing on your funding section now, if you have answered yes to the other funding question, this must be because you are requesting double funding from a public body. So that is money for items that you previously received funding for. And the screenshot on the left is where you will add this information in. You also need to be very careful that you are declaring things correctly because your answer may make you ineligible to progress in the competition. The screenshot on the right is an example of the finance summary. As you can see, it does not deduct the other funding figure shown circled in purple from the funding source. However, any funding declared in other funding is reviewed as part of our eligibility checks. So if you declare that you have received other public funding for the same project activities, we must deduct that amount from your funding source total, since we cannot fund the same activities twice. A previous development stage of the same project does not count as the same project activities unless you are trying to claim money for material items that you've already received funding for. So for collaborative applications, IFS will highlight to the lead applicant any partners who have outstanding project finances to complete. All finances must be included in the application before the lead applicant can submit. It will also check that your research participation costs are within the required limits. But please note that IFS does not validate total project costs, so it is up to you to be able to check to make sure that this falls within the scope of this competition. So before you can submit your application, all organisations within an application must agree to the terms and conditions, and IFS will not let you submit if this is outstanding. We do want to stress how important it is for you to submit your application as early as possible. Our customer support services can help resolve any issues that you might have when submitting, but only if they are contacted in good time before the deadline. The lead applicant carries the responsibility of ensuring that all partners in the application, if applicable, have completed their assigned sections and accepted their terms and conditions. Now, this chart on the screen shows some of our recent competitions, and the red bar denotes all submissions in the last 3 hours before closing. We do not allow extensions, so if you leave it too late and experience any kind of technical or internet issues, we may not be able to help you in time, and then you will not be able to submit your application. If you find that you need to edit your application once it has been submitted, then this is possible. First, you need to reopen your application. On your IFS dashboard, you will see the option to reopen as shown on the table. The option to reopen is visible on your application status page. Once reopened, you can make changes to your application, but when you've finished, please remember to resubmit. Just click on the green Review and Submit button, review your application once more, and then click the Final Submit button. Now, when preparing your application, it is very important that I share with you some things that you should consider if you are planning to use artificial intelligence to support you. Innovate UK does not endorse or oppose the use of AI technology. However, we are seeing an increase in the use of AI in applications. So it is necessary that you do your own research as to whether this is the right tool for you and consider the pros and cons of using this technology. If you do use it, Innovate UK does not accept any responsibility for any impact on your idea. Whilst AI does offer many benefits, it is important that you are aware that you are potentially sharing your idea with the world. So I'm now going to mention some funding rules and how your grants would be awarded should you be successful. So firstly, there are some instances where we would not be able to award you any funding. This could be if you have an outstanding final claim or independent account report, which is an IAR, on a live Innovate UK project. In this case, you will not be eligible to apply to this competition as a lead or a partner organisation. We will also not award you any further funding if you have not made substantial effort to exploit a previous award or failed to comply with the grant terms and conditions. Now, we award our grants under the UK subsidy control regime, which incorporates various agreements and frameworks. This slide shows the definition of a subsidy. Now, Innovate UK is unable to award funding to organisations that are considered to be in financial difficulty. All organisations that are awarded funding are subjected to financial viability and eligibility checks. If you are an applicant who is conducting activities that will affect the trade of goods and/or electricity between Northern Ireland and the European Union, as envisaged by Article 10 of the Windsor Framework, then your grant would be awarded under the European Commission state aid rules. In order to be eligible to receive state aid, you must pass the Undertakings in Difficulty test. This only applies to limited liability companies that are more than 3 years old. If you have a parent company, the test can be performed on your parent or holding company instead. If you're successful in the competition, we will apply this test as part of our viability checks, if it applies. Now, if you are unsure of whether you are eligible to receive state aid, please seek legal advice or further information from our website. You can also contact our customer support services team if you have any questions. Now, funding for R&D projects is split into 3 research categories: feasibility studies, industrial research, and experimental development, which throughout Innovate UK competitions are eligible for different levels of funding depending on the size of the organisation. Now, this competition, we have industrial research and experimental development projects, and as you can see on the screen there, the percentages that you would be able to claim funding for. So, for instance, if you are a medium-sized organisation applying for an industrial research project, you could get funding for up to 60% of your eligible project costs. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the assessment. So to help you understand what happens after you've submitted your application, Innovate UK have produced a series of videos and the link to our YouTube playlist, which talks about how the applications are assessed, is on this slide. And as I said, the PDF of these slides will be available after this briefing to download from IFS within the next 24 hours. So you'll be able to find the YouTube playlist there. So you will receive a notification explaining the next steps if you pass the technical assessment, where you will proceed to project setup in IFS. Now, all 8 steps are detailed in your notification, which you must complete within a maximum of 90 calendar days from the date that you receive the notification. Please be patient during this stage, as assigning MSPs and getting finance checks completed can take several weeks. Please ensure that you share the T's and C's with your legal team at the earliest possible opportunity. Once notified, you'll have 30 calendar days to do this. The final step will be to sign and return your grant offer letter. We must first approve it, and then you will get a go live email confirming that you can start your project. Your project will always have a start date of the 1st of the month, and you can only claim for costs incurred and paid for after your project has started. Before we end, I just want to touch on our partners, the Innovate UK Business Growth Team. So if you are a small to medium-sized business and a successful applicant, you will be contacted by the Innovate UK Business Growth Team about working with an innovation and growth specialist. Now, these specialists focus on helping you to grow your business by accessing the right finance and funding and facilitating connections to potential partners, as well as protecting your intellectual property and access to many other tools to help you scale up and access the global market. Now, more information about the work that the business growth team undertake within our SME community can be found via the link on this slide. And here we also have some useful links to help and provide support to you during the application process and beyond. We highly recommend that you read our general guidance and check out Business Connect's Good Application Guide. If you need some help pulling together your collaboration agreement, then please do check out the Lambert Toolkit. We cannot otherwise advise you on how to put this together. We have also provided some useful links to keep you updated and in touch with all of the opportunities that are available. And now that brings us to the end of the briefing slides. So we're going to start the Q&A now. So if you want to type any questions you have into the Q&A box, and we will try to answer them now. And whilst we do this, I'm going to leave the contact details up on the screen for Innovate UK and for the Advanced Propulsion Centre. So I'm going to start off with the first question, and I'll read that out. And Alex or Dan or Nick, if you want to chime in, then just go ahead. So the first question is the project able to start earlier than October the 1st if still within project grant and max 12 months?
Yeah, thanks, James. I'll pick this one up. So yes, absolutely. We're looking to notify around about June time. So if your project is quick and ready through the setup process, it absolutely can start earlier than the 1st of October. The 1st of October is more the hard stop.
Yes, you can't start after October the 1st, but yeah, you can do it a little bit before. Thank you, Alex. Next question says, please can you clarify the difference between this competition and the APC 26 competition? Don't know who wants to do that.
Okay, so I'll pick that one up. The scope is very similar for both competitions. However, the type of project that comes forward is quite different. ARMD, as Alex has just explained, has very strict boundaries in terms of financials. So project cost of 1 to 3 million. APC 26, the lowest project value is 5 million. It can go up to 40 million. So match funding for both. The technology scope very similar, but in terms of the size and shape of the projects and the timeline for delivery of the projects is quite different. The other thing to say is that for APC 26, collaboration is mandatory, whereas it's optional for ARMD4. They are the key differences.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. So the next question is, can you confirm the TRL level you are considering at project start?
Yeah, so we're looking around TRL 4 and above. So we want to do that so that firstly you're able to actually demonstrate that progression in the TRL levels. So we can't go any earlier than that.
Thanks. Thanks, Alex. So the next question is, does venture investment from a fund who sourced their capital from the British Business Bank count as public or non-public match funding?
We lost a little bit of that
I
one,
think
James,
it
but
might be
I
worth.
can see the question.
Okay. Yeah.
So the British Business Bank is non-public. It counts as private investment and would be something that would be discussed if questions arose in that part of the application. I think just picking up on one that may or may not have been missed, we've been also asked about distinguishing between revisited, revised applications.
I'll do that at the end, Dan.
Okay, I'll leave that one to you then.
So we can then go through it with the slides. So I'll do that one in a minute, if that's okay. The next question is, would a lithium-ion battery recycling operation be eligible for this funding?
So the simple answer is yes. Lithium-ion batteries, part of energy storage, clearly within scope. The real question would be, what is the actual project objectives? What are you trying to deliver? Does that match with the objectives of the funding? And that's one of these that you know, the APC offers our support to work with applicants before they submit. So the detail behind it is something that you should be reaching out and discussing with the APC or Innovate UK.
Thank you. Next question. What must the consortium be made of? Are research partners and SMEs required? I have a manufacturer, design partner, supply chain partner, testing house, and end customer. Would that be eligible?
So the simple answer is yes. You know, if you decide to come into ARMD4 with a collaboration, and you have a clear, agreed set of objectives that you want to work on together, then the mix of that collaboration is entirely up to you. The funding allowed at individual organisation level can vary. So the project itself or the application itself is max 50%, but there can be some variability at partner level. All I think we would guard against is making things perhaps a bit too complicated. We're talking here about, 9 to 12-month project sprints that have probably got significant milestones within them. And all I would say from experience, and I'm sure others would agree, that if you make a project too complex for this fund, it makes delivery a bit of a challenge. So sometimes simple is best in this format.
Cool. Thank you, Dan. Next question. How are successful projects governed? What reporting is required during the projects, and what is the criteria for being selected to present at Cenex?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of how successful projects are governed, so you'll be monitored on criteria through the monitoring service provider support with Innovate UK. You'll also be assigned a project delivery lead from the Advanced Propulsion Centre as well. So they will be there to support you in terms of all of the kind of materials that you'll need to report on throughout your project. But you'll be looking at the key criteria of risk and timing and all those aspects of your project. In terms of governance, so what we're really looking for is that you've got the applicable level of kind of sign up and authority for your business to be able to successfully and commercially exploit this afterwards. So you need to make sure that you've got the backing of the right levels of seniority within your business. So yeah, I think probably covered that point. But in terms of criteria for Cenex, so I think at this stage what we can say is that it will be part of a competitive process, most likely. So we're going to try and take as many projects through to Cenex as we can, but we just need to be mindful of overall the overall plans for that event. It's 2026, so it's 2025 event is at the forefront of everyone's minds at the moment. So there's a bit more planning to do on that. But yeah, all I can say now is we'll look to take as many as we can. The projects must be ready to go there, and they'll be part of a competitive process at the time.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex. So the next question I've been reading through. We've had quite a few questions about the 50% match funding. So I'm going to read out the first one, and it'll probably apply the rest. So since this project requires 50% match funding, will the standard 70% funding rate for SME eligible project costs still apply?
So just to reiterate what Alex has said, the 50% is a max for the application, okay, for the project itself. So if there are different types of organizations that are eligible for different levels of intervention, like the 70 and 80% mentioned, you've still got to find a way of balancing it at 50%. So, that's down to the consortia to decide to do that. There is, we've had issues in the past. I'll speak openly about it. If people tick 70% because they're allowed to as an SME, or higher than that for a university, and the application comes in requesting over 50%, it will not be assessed. It will be ruled ineligible immediately. So if you are working with a university, you've got to find a way of balancing the books so that you only ask for a maximum of 50% funding for the application at the highest level. And that's because this is late stage R&D. So that applies to the funding that APC supports. So across ARMD4 and APC 26, that 50% cap is in place for late stage R&D and industrialization projects. I hope that needs to be really clear for everybody. The system will allow you, when eligible, to put more in, but if you put a project in above 50%, it will be marked ineligible immediately. Apologies for making a strong point, but we don't want you to put applications in that don't even go for assessment.
Just to give an example of that, or two examples. So for instance, if you were a micro or small organization collaborating with a large organization, your maximum grant request obviously would have to be 50%, but it does let you require the 70%. So you'd have to balance it some way, like Dan said. So for instance, the large could claim for less than 50%, but you could still take 70% of your costs as long as the total project is 50% match funded overall.
And I guess, James, just broken record from me.
Yeah.
If it's not clear, we're here to help. We're here to discuss. You can get to us on email really quickly and easily. There's various links on the website. So if you've got a query, you want to run through a scenario for numbers or get further explanation, please reach out.
Perfect. And again, it's the same for Innovate UK. You can call our customer support services at any time that is on the screen there, and they'll be able to help you out. So I'm just going to run through the other questions quickly that relate to this. So yeah, that one's been answered. Okay. Next question then. So I want to talk now about the revisited or revised applications being materially different. So Dan, you were going to answer this one, and I'll just pop the slide up on screen there for Innovate UK's definition of a previously or not previously submitted application.
You carry on, James. I think
okay.
it's better for you to use this slide. That's good.
Yeah, no problem. So basically, if you have submitted an application before, and it was deemed ineligible or it wasn't selected for funding and you were given assessor feedback, if you then take that away and you change the project based on the assessor feedback so that it is clearly seen that you've acted on the assessor feedback and the project is now substantially different to what it was like before, then that is fine for you to then be classed as a not previously submitted application. And the same thing as well goes for if you have one project that you've received funding for or that is a previously submitted application, and now even within the same company or the same consortium, if you now have an entirely new project, again, that's not a previously submitted application. It specifically relates to the same project being not materially different from the previous one. So hope that answered the question. Dan, did you want to add anything, or is that covers it from your side?
That covers it, James. Thank you.
Cool. Next question. Can you confirm the point about existing funding? We have a project finishing at the end of March. Does that mean we can still apply from this for this? I believe yes. Yeah, again, if it's a different project, then you're fine because you're receiving funding for two projects. If it was the same project, then obviously, as I've just explained, that would be different. The next question is, what are the subcontractor limits for funding?
Yeah, so you probably see these in some other competitions, but we don't actually have a set percentage subcontractor limit for this one. However, if your subcontractor costs, we would expect to be sort of commensurate with the work that you're doing. And so if your subcontractor costs are exceptionally high, it have to be very, very strongly justified why they're not a member of your consortium, or why they're not in a different, or why it's absolutely essential to you delivering the project and not some other company. So yeah, I think that answers that one.
Cool. Thank you, Alex. The next question says, I understand that non-UK partners are not encouraged, but as part of the project, is it okay to buy equipment from non-UK equipment sources?
Yeah, so I mean, I can definitely cover the second part of that. We would love for everything to be sourced and run from the UK, but we definitely acknowledge, in some areas you would need to purchase equipment from overseas as part of your project. And as long as you justify that and give some explanation as to why you cannot source that from the UK, or why it is absolutely critically uncompetitive for you to do so, as long as you detail that in your application, then that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I think.
Just maybe a quick comment from me in terms of overseas organisations. If there is a clear justification for the involvement of working with overseas companies, then include that, make that apparent. You obviously can't claim a grant without a UK legal entity, which I think is clear for everybody. But if you have to work with overseas companies, and you can justify that and outline that, whether it's equipment like Alex has said or knowledge transfer of another type, then just make that clear within your application.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And it's similar to the with the subcontractors point as well, just so that there's no confusion. It's with the subcontractors again that you need justification as to why you would use an overseas subcontractor, and it's a similar point. So next question: if I need to deliver a project for Q1 next year, would ARMD be suitable? I think that's. Alex, what would you say? I was going to say probably not, but
Well, I think in the eligibility, the projects are 9 to 12 months in duration. So
even if it started earlier than October, 9 months is going to take you. I mean, if it started in July, for instance, if you got projects set up done quickly, August, September, October, November, December. No, that'd take you to April still. So it's probably highly unlikely.
I think rather than try and sort of engineer a response, I think this is a good one for people to reach out and contact Innovate or APC, run through the actual project, what it's delivering, and make a sort of a higher level decision rather than just simply on the timeline.
And I would say the best people to contact about that would probably be APC. So if for anyone listening to this, if you want to talk about the project specifics, anything technical, definitely call APC as opposed to Innovate, as we will be able to answer things around IFS, around eligibility criteria. But if you want to talk about your project, do call APC, because if you called us, we would be pointing you to APC anyway. Okay, so the next question: would the mineral extraction and refining of battery materials using new refining techniques be eligible?
So, simple answer once again is yes. We're interested in projects that fit in with our scope, and obviously electrical energy storage is that, and we're obviously targeting growth and investment in supply chain. So the answer is yes, but again, to get into specifics, please reach out, talk to the APC about what kind of projects you are considering.
Cool, thank you, Dan. Next question: can you re-explain the eligibility criteria requiring funding for other projects if we have an active fund? I think this came in before we actually talked about the projects before, but just to reiterate, has to be a separate project. If I haven't answered your question, whoever asked that, we've still got quite a few questions yet. Please send it in again, and I'll go over it again. But I think you sent that in before we talked about it last time. So the next question: are research/academic partners required? No, it's not a requirement, but obviously they can be involved. Next question: although partnering is not compulsory, are partner projects seen as more favourable? I don't think so.
No. So I think the key point, and I guess those two questions that we've just had are linked in a way. You can apply for an ARMD grant as a single entity. Okay, it's all about how the objectives are being met through the project. If you have a project that needs collaboration, whether that be with another organization or a research organization or a university, that will be because the collaboration is needed to deliver on the objectives. So if you need to partner with someone to deliver, then partner. If you don't, then don't. If you have agreements around subcontract with the right method for you, then those are all still options for you. So we're not stipulating whether you collaborate or not. We want the projects to be right to deliver on the project objectives that meet the scope of the competition. Again, reach out if there's a nervousness about how you're approaching it, but it's done in such a way that the choice is yours as to how you define collaboration and subcontract in order to deliver on the objectives. That's the key message.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Next question: if there are no UK suppliers who can provide the service, what evidence do we need to provide to show that?
I think this is one of those that falls into assumptions. If you can justify and provide, you know, a link or some narrative that explains that situation. It's about evidence that backs up your application, then include that.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. And the last question, if you work with a European Union partner who does not claim grant, do their costs count towards the project and the 50% grant funding rule?
Yeah, I think that's detailed in the scope section on IFS. So just that point is your project can include non-UK partners, including partners based in the EU who bring their own funding. Non-UK partners are permitted to carry out project work from within their home countries and exploit the results overseas. Their costs will count towards the total eligible project costs. But, you know, just within that point, I would stress that, you know, that work needs to be justified in terms of the entire project. And we are looking at UK growth, UK productivity, and the commercial outcomes for the UK-based entities as well. So it has to be part of the whole picture. But yes, in simple answer to the question, it does.
Perfect, thank you. And to reiterate the point earlier as well, if you obviously, you know, you're aiming to have UK partners, but if you did have an EU partner who's not claiming grant, you as an SME could end up claiming that 70% of your costs, because it could be netted off against a non-claiming grant partner or a partner claiming less than 50%. So just to explain how that works again. There's no more questions. So just want to say thank you to everybody who has attended. And thanks, Dan, thanks, Alex, and thank you, Nick, as well. If you have any more questions beyond this, please call Innovate UK Customer Support Services or call or email the APC, and you can discuss things in further detail. And like I said before, technical stuff, definitely go to APC. If it's about applying or anything to do with technicalities of the competition, then come to Innovate. But I'm going to end the webinar now. So thanks very much, everyone, and we look forward to receiving your applications.
Absolutely. Brilliant. See you later, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Well,